All right. Welcome, everyone. This is the Friday Tech Talk at the Tech Academy. My name is Kenzie, and we're joined by Ben Parisot from Planet Argon, who is going to be discussing how to leverage your non-technical background in order to be an awesome candidate when transitioning into tech. So thanks so much for being here, everyone, and I'm going to let Ben take it away. Welcome, Ben. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Kenzie. Thanks for asking me to participate, and thanks for everyone who's showed up to hear me blabber on about my experiences and some of the things that I've learned in both applying for jobs, coming from a non-traditional technology career path, as well as being a hiring manager. Yes, Julia, non-technical background. So let's dive right in to presentation. I'm not stalling for time while I find the tab. There we go. Yes. All right. So welcome to there we are. Yes, your non-tech experience is relevant. 9 tips for leveraging past work history to land your dream dev job. Now, in case anyone is wondering, who the heck is this random guy? First of all, how dare you? She's a legend. But just in case anyone is actually out of the loop, my name is Ben Parisot. The T is silent. I'm the software engineering manager at Planet Argon. We are a Ruby on Rails agency based in Portland, dedicated to helping businesses reduce rework and save time and money by updating and maintaining their existing Rails applications. My past jobs have included barista, waiter, project manager, news editor, copywriter, and even carny. My favorite TV show is Mystery Science Theater 3000, and my favorite food is butter. It used to be lobster, and then after that it was popcorn, but I realized quickly that those are just vehicles for butter. So why try and fake it? All right. So who is this presentation for? Well, you probably, if you're here, it's probably for you. It's for generally second career developers, although some people might be new to their career in general and getting into development as their first thing. That's cool too. But specifically for second career developers, generally without a lot of experience. So we're talking mostly juniors. And specifically, I'm going to talk about things that I've experienced as a hiring manager for agencies. So this would be people that are generally applying for agency jobs, though I do hope that most of this this information can be used if you're applying for a product shop as well. So you might have noticed that little asterisk in the title. The title is actually not really that accurate because tech is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. There's no such thing as a non-tech career. You have worked in tech before. You probably just don't realize it. Retail and service jobs often use a lot of point of sale systems. Marketing jobs use a lot of email automation software. If you were in sales before, you probably used a CRM tool like Salesforce or something. So I want you to start thinking about your past experience using technology as a way to inform your interview answers and boost your confidence. You don't necessarily need to go back to it and use it as a way to prove that you have development skills, but it should make you feel a little bit more confident and better about approaching the application process because you use tech all the time. All right, so we're going to dive right in and talk number 1 about my very first tip right out of the gate, which is accepting your lot in life, your technical limitations, where you are currently with your job search, your career path into development. Most people, I'm assuming here, are junior developers applying for junior developer positions, and that's fine. That's great. You're probably applying for those junior developer positions. Guess what? Hiring managers are looking for junior developers. So what we want to see there is you demonstrating what you do know well. So what does that mean? That means if you're taking a Rails course, you're probably going to focus on hopefully applying for Rails positions and even not using the experience that you learned in your Rails course as an example of how you can learn and what you do know. one thing that I see a fair amount, surprisingly, specifically when talking with more junior or mid-level candidates, is a tendency to maybe exaggerate their expertise or sometimes flat out lie about their experience with technologies. Please don't do that. It's going to come out in a technical interview. Even if it doesn't, it's going to come out if we do end up offering you a job. It's going to come out that you don't actually have the experience that you said you did. And that's generally very worse than just flat out saying, I don't have that experience yet. And to that point, instead of lying, embrace the yet. The yet statement is something I love to hear in interviews. It could be something as simple as, I haven't worked much with S3 buckets yet, but I'm excited to learn. And then you do a little trick where you pivot, put it back on the interviewer and say, so does this company offer any professional development funds I could put towards earning an AWS certification? Oh, what does that do? It makes me, the interviewer, have to start talking about myself and my company, which I love to do. And it means that you are thinking forward. You're thinking about what you hope to get and how and where you hope to end up in your career growth. And the ways that me as your manager or your employer could help you get there. So it's a really good way to show forward thinkingness and forward thinkingness, I guess. Okay, number 2, demonstrate areas in which you're not a junior. So all of that previous stuff about accepting your junior status aside, now it's time to focus on ways that you are actually a consummate professional in other ways. You have a lot of irrelevant experience. You probably just don't realize it yet because lots of other jobs are relevant to the tech industry. If you've been a waiter or you've been in the service industry, guess what? You've spent years in a client-facing role. If you are a marketer, you probably have a really good UX mindset. If you're a researcher, you're probably used to working with big data sets. So there are ways to talk about your past experience that make it not just sort of a list of the jobs that you've had, but relevant to the position that you're hiring for. My good friend Megan Marshall, I went to Alchemy with her. She is a full stack developer at Sprinkler. She came from a sales and communication, customer service background. And her tip was that, she said, I used to work in sales and customer service, and the communication skills I learned have been invaluable in my new career. I can articulate questions about issues I'm working on, and I can write code that is easy for my teammates to understand. So Megan was able to take her communication background and what she learned in sales, which is, not very tech related, and apply it in her interview process as well as in her current job to land the job and to improve her chances of going forward in that career. Tip number 3, don't be afraid of non-technical answers. This is another thing that I find a little surprising when I'm interviewing a lot of juniors especially, is people will tend to always want to go back to a development response. And sometimes I don't actually want to hear that. One question I often ask in an interview is, what is something you learned lately that isn't related to coding? And oftentimes someone will say, oh, well, I'm reading this book on object-oriented programming, or oh, I just got my AWS certification. It's like, cool, not the question that I asked you. So when you hear something like that, it's not a trick question. We're actually asking you about who you are as a human being because we want to know who that is. Sometimes if someone does give me a tech response to a non-tech question, depending on how they're answering, it can come across as if they didn't hear my question, or they heard it and they decided that their answer was more important than the answer that I was trying to get at from my question. And either way, it just it sort of halts the interview a bit. A colleague of mine, Marty Martinez, who's a software engineer too currently, demonstrates a way that he talked about his past career in a way that wasn't directly related to technical, the technical answers in an interview. He says, I used my previous experiences, especially as a middle school teacher, to highlight specific examples of strengths based on the interview questions. The anecdotes turned into in-depth conversations regarding my problem-solving abilities, leadership skills, and team-oriented mindset. So Marty was able to talk about the skills he learned as a teacher and how they made him a good professional and a good employee, and not necessarily have to immediately go back to why he's the right developer for the job. All right, I am really rushed. Oops, that's not right. There we go. We're still on 4. Tip number 4. So speaking of being the right employee for the job versus the right developer, I want, when I'm developing or when I'm interviewing people, I really want to see people that can reassure me that you can work with other people. You undoubtedly had coworkers in past jobs. So I want to hear stories about working with those types of people to solve problems or resolve conflicts. So like it says, companies aren't just hiring you as a developer, they're hiring you as an employee, which an employee is a multitude of different things with a lot of different responsibilities outside of just strictly coding. So what does that mean? I want to hear specifically. Tell me a story from your past work example or from your past work experience about a time you and a coworker or multiple coworkers had to solve a problem together. That's important. Another important, if you aren't prompted this, you should probably just volunteer this information, but a story about resolving a conflict with a coworker, that's huge. And in general, just try to convince me that my team isn't going to dread working with you. I want to find people that have the right skill set and can do the job, but I'm also very protective of my team. You know, Planet Argon is a relatively small company, and I want to make sure that the people I'm hiring aren't going to come on and not be able to work with anyone else there. So show proof that that's not the case and that you're going to be able to get along and communicate well with everyone else that I've got on the team. Tip number 5, I am really blowing through these. Kinsey, I did not time myself on this, so we might have a really long Q&A session, just FYI.
Yeah, these can last anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half. We're not strict on the schedule or the time.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to read the last slide really slow, and we'll get around to 29 to 30 minutes. Tip number 5, show me that you can learn. So what do I mean by this? This is me wanting to see that you came into a previous job without a lot of experience, and then you left that job with a new skill set or a new tool under your belt. So tell me a story about what you struggled with going into your last job, now you're really good at. A good example of this, a former employee of mine, Scott, he had a military background. And when he went into the military, he wasn't very team-oriented. He was very sort of siloed when he was thinking about as a problem solver. And of course, being in the military, being part of a team, you have to work together and specifically work together with a lot of disparate types of people from a lot of different backgrounds. So Scott told me that I think the Army best prepared me for a career in coding by learning how to collaborate with a wide variety of people. Finding ways to leverage strengths from a diverse team is an essential skill, whether you're planning a convoy or building an API. And I think that's a big thing. And I saw him demonstrate that multiple times, the ability to communicate and cooperate with multiple different type of people. And not only teammates, but also clients and external contractors. So if you can come in and tell me about a time that you grew because of a previous job, that's going to be huge. This is a really big one, and I'll probably spend a little extra time on this one because I want to get into the last bullet point that I have there. But making your career change story compelling is super important. I'll give you a couple examples. Just for myself, I got into software development because I attended an interactive art conference in New Orleans, and I saw a lot of really cool artists present on really cool topics, and they all used technology to supplement and enhance the work that they were doing. Specifically, I was really inspired by a professor who was giving a talk on an AI machine, a machine learning program that she built that in her mind was going to sort of transform the way that people approach development. And the way that she described her process was, she said that I come up with the way that I come up with the end result first, and then sort of dissect that to figure out what I need to learn in order to build that. And it really kind of blew my mind, and I never thought about software development that way. And it really inspired me to try to build stuff. I kind of, I guess, thought that software developers were sort of like sprouted from the earth, and they had all the tools that they needed right out of the gate, and they never had to like, deconstruct something to figure out what they needed to learn. And that inspired me to just try to think of things to build and then figure out what I needed to learn to build them. Similarly, I interviewed someone recently that got into development because they were annoyed by the noises that their children's video games made. So they wanted to learn how to make video games so that they could make fun video games for their kids that had a more soothing, less annoying soundtrack and sound effects involved. And they said in the interview, they did that for that reason, and then they realized that this was a career path that they wanted to get into because they were really enjoying the work that they were doing for that reason. Another way that you can talk about your career change story is comparing it to your past career track, and what about it was starting to, annoy you or get to you. Maybe you had long work hours. Maybe you were being asked to do things that you didn't feel comfortable doing, or maybe you were asked to do things that you just didn't really like, or maybe it was a physically demanding job, or the hours that you were being asked to work didn't allow you to have time with your friends or your family. Lots of reasons why you might leave your past career. If you can use those as an example for why software development is an attractive thing, you can say software development, my past job was just such a drag. I had to go, I was a waiter. I had to wait tables every evening. I never got to see my kids after they came home from school. I was up late. And this will give me the chance to work during the day from home and be there as a parent, or vice versa, go out to spend time at dinner with my friends instead of having to be the one that serves them. There's ways to transition or talk about your transition in a way that makes your new software development path really appealing to you. Similarly, you can talk about your career change as just what excites you about being a developer. Usually most people have an aha moment. So I was in a intro JavaScript class years ago at Epicodus, and I was working on some simple project where I was trying to make a div fill up a percentage of a way based on a number that the person was putting into a form. And it took me so long to figure out how to get that function working. And it was 1 in the morning. I was all by myself at home, working in the dark in my room. And I finally got it to work after 2 hours of just slamming my head against the wall for it. And I stood up and I cheered for myself. And I realized, oh, I've never done that before. In any other type of job, have I ever cheered for myself for doing something that I had been struggling to do? So that, lots of people have experiences like that where they were really struggling with a program that they were working on, and they got it to work, and then that just clicked for them, and they knew that that's what they wanted to do. So tell me about that story. I want to hear that story too. One thing I don't want to hear as a hiring manager is COVID. This is, I know, kind of a touchy subject because I know a lot of people did make their career change during the pandemic, and I completely understand why. And I think that there's ways of talking about it, but I've heard a number of times in interviews, specifically with entry-level people just coming out of boot camp, why did you get into development? Well, I lost my job because of the pandemic, and I kind of thought that maybe coding would be a good way to get like a salaried position. There seem to be a lot of coding jobs. Cool, that may be very well true, but it's not very compelling, and it doesn't really show a lot of enthusiasm or excitement for the industry. Even if that is true, all factually true, there's lots of other trades, because like a boot camp is essentially a trade school, right? We all went to trade school. There's lots of other trade schools you could have gone to, but you chose coding for some reason. So if you are going to mention the pandemic, you're going to mention coding, mention as an opportunity, like, oh, this was my chance to pursue coding because I think it's this, and then you can get into the second bullet point, or you can move right into your aha moment or something. But don't make it sound like you were saddled with coding school because COVID meant you lost your last job. Yeah. Anyways, enough about that. What made you pick coding school? Tell me that story. That's what I want to hear. All right. Tip number 7, draw on past positions when asking questions. I've seen some really, really good examples of this in interviews, and it's one of my favorite things to see when people do well. So lots of people will research the company that they're applying for, and that's great. I think everyone should do that. But you should also try to figure out what the differences are between your past work experiences and the role that you're going to be applying for, because that's going to show me that you've thought about the type of work that you want to be doing, and you're out there to land the right job for you, not just the first available job that is going to hire you. So some examples for this are, in my past job, I was required to track my time by the hour. How do you manage time tracking at this company? That shows me that, one, you have experience with time tracking, because that's something that I asked about in an interview. It also shows that you want to sort of come into the job ready to go, and understand the processes and the policies before you even start. And yeah, if depending on when you ask it into interview, it may be preempting the question that I'm going to ask you, which is always an impressive thing when a candidate does that. Another one would be, I received quarterly performance reviews in my last job. How often would I get feedback from my manager in this role? Back a couple previous slides ago, when we talked about flipping it back onto the interviewer, these are all really good ways to do that. Oftentimes, unless a company has a really solid performance review in place, or process in place, this might sort of make them try to sell the company a little bit more. And I mean, this might not be true for every interviewer, but if if a candidate kind of puts me on the spot and asks me something about a process or a policy or something that we have at Planet Argon that is maybe still in the works or hasn't really been really well finalized, I definitely want to impress them. Like I see it as like, oh, you caught me. Let me tell you about the ways that we've been trying to make this better and something. And in that way, like, I'm invested in them because I've opened up and I've been vulnerable in a way that I might not have been with other candidates. So, it doesn't have to be about performance reviews. We hold them. It could be, job hierarchy, career ladders, benefits, professional development time, anything like that. Are great examples of a way to get an interviewer to be vulnerable and open up with you. All right, tip number 8, be professional, even in technical interviews. This is something, actually, I do have to say, when I interview more junior or entry level, even a lot of mid-level developers, by far way more professional than some of the more seasoned developers. I think there's an element of more seasoned developers feel like they are entitled to positions, and so they don't necessarily need to present as professional or take it as seriously as as they might as someone who's a little more hungry, a little more eager to get their first dev job. But just a reminder that I'm taking this, as your interviewer, I'm taking this interview seriously, and I would ask the same respect from you. What does that show up like? It shows up like a lot of things. One of them is enthusiasm. I love to see enthusiasm. It doesn't, you don't have to be the most chipper, perky person. Don't try to be someone that you're not. Oops, sorry. Do show me that you want the job. Like if you're enthusiastic about this job, I want to see that. If not, maybe don't apply for it. I do hate to be this guy, but I'm probably not going to hire you if you show up looking super disheveled, like you just rolled out of bed, wrinkly shirt. Appearance isn't everything, but what I am looking for, and this goes to the next point as well, is someone, specifically because we're an agency, that I can trust putting in front of a client. And if this is how you are choosing to approach me the first time that you're meeting me, I don't know that I can trust that you're going to show up in a professional way to a client. Yeah, that's just the fact. You don't have to go out and buy super fancy new clothes, but ask yourself, what would I wear to an in-person interview, and maybe dress like that. Distractions. So we're all working from home. We all have a million things. I had to shoo my cat out of the room before this presentation because otherwise he'd be up walking around the keyboard. That being said, I don't mind seeing cats and kids and roommates and stuff. I understand we're all working from home and living in shared work environments now. So that's fine. What I want to see, though, is how you respond to those distractions, and either incorporate them or don't let them really just like slam the brakes on the interview. I've had multiple different types of interviews where people have had their kids or their animals come into the video and stuff, and I think that's fine. One person actually sat their kid on their lap when they did the interview, and that's great. But it was a way to like keep the interview going. I have also had someone who answered a phone call in the middle of an interview, put their finger up, put themselves on mute, got up, went and walked across the room, grabbed that phone call, and stood there for like 2 minutes and talked on the phone, and then came back. So he did not get the job, but it was just like, I was kind of blown away, like, sure, your phone can be ringing. That happens to us all. But yeah, exactly. Maybe it was a better job offer. There's ways to, like a cat jumping on your keyboard, there's ways to say, oh, I'm sorry, here, let me excuse, blah, blah, blah. My phone is bothering me, let me put it on silent, something like that. Not a bad, just, you have to roll with it. Show me that that's not going to completely derail the interview. And that if this were to happen in a client call, that you wouldn't just put the client on mute and go, wash some dishes or something. All right, my last and final tip before we get started. Yeah, switch to the cat face. That's exactly right. Before we get to the thing, is that, remember, I really want you to be the one that I get to hire. I like talking with people. I enjoy it, but it is not my full-time job. It is something that takes up time on my calendar, and it can be sort of a slog depending on how many people I'm looking to hire and the number of interviews we have that day or that week. So yeah, I don't love doing interviews. I think they're fine. But the sooner I can hire someone, the sooner I can stop doing the interviewing and get back to my full-time job as a manager, which is what I actually like to do. A couple of things on top of that. Some people come into interviews like this is an adversarial meeting or a game of cat and mouse and we're trying to like one up each other. No, like I want to hire you. I want you to like me. I want to like you. I want this to all end well. So I think that you should approach it like that, with that in mind, that the person that's talking to you really has high hopes for you and wants you to do well. Also, I'm assuming that you fit what I'm looking for because you applied for the job. And I do a pretty good job of, I think, writing the descriptions of our job descriptions, what we're looking for. If you have applied, I'm kind of assuming that you've read those and that you fit the bill. So I'm starting with very high expectations of you're going to work out. And hopefully that will continue on through the process. So all in all, that kind of went a little negative, but I want it to be a positive. Most hiring managers, most people that you'll be talking to interviews are excited to talk to you and want you to do well. We want you to succeed in the technical interview. We want you to do well in a cultural interview or communication interview or whatever it is. We want to hire you. So keep that in mind when you're approaching these. And that is my presentation. I've got I'll drop my LinkedIn profile here in, oops, that's not me, that's my notifications. I'll drop it in the chat, so if anyone wants to connect with me, you can. And then also feel free to email me. It's just ben@planetargon.com. If you have any follow-up questions, I believe this presentation is going to be on YouTube. So if you want to review it, fine, I suppose. But if you've got any specific questions about any of the slides or anything that I've talked about, I'm more than happy to talk and answer any questions and connect on LinkedIn or Slack or anywhere else. And that is my presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ben. And yeah, if anyone wants to ask questions, you can drop them in the chat box. You can unmute yourself. Seeing lots of thank yous. I think Ricardo asked, when you were talking about hobbies not related to tech, what if all of your hobbies are kind of related to tech?
That's amazing. Great question. I actually had that. So in that slide, I think it was I had one of the pull quote things. I actually had another bullet point below those that I had to take out in order to make room for that, which is, if you have no other interests, just say so. Like, that's fine. I know a lot of people are just fully tech related, and that's great. If that's who you are as a human being, then that's what I want to know. Like, that's great. It's not a negative thing or anything. Yeah, it's more of me finding out more about who you are, what's the type of person I can expect to be coming into the company, and how you might fit on the team. So if you're a super tech person and you live and breathe it, and you get done with work coding, and then you go and you work on your side project, and then you read coding blogs and you listen to coding podcasts as you fall asleep, cool. I want to hear about it. Portfolio projects. Okay, so Lorette asks, for portfolio projects, do you prefer completely original, or is it okay to take a Udemy project and say add testing and a few upgrades? Yeah, either or. I have no Udemy project things are great. Everyone is going to start somewhere. I'd rather see you showcase something that is done, and whether that's from a course and you've embellished it, or you've added testing, or something like that. I think that's great. Yeah, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I'm not getting into your GitHub repo, finding the Udemy project repo, cross-referencing it with all of the different courses that I've seen online and trying to figure out where you came up with that, I'm probably just going to say, unless it says Udemy project in the repo title, I will probably never know. I'm just going to be looking at like, what the code qualities looks like. Does it have test coverage? That sort of thing. So if you're using it as an example in a portfolio, I would say, yeah, I called out, this is a project that I did for this course. Here's how I maybe upgraded it or changed it because of XYZ. And I think that would be perfect. Good interpersonal skills, Ryan asks, experiences to highlight in the interview process. Good communication is number one. So that kind of just goes throughout the entire interview process in general. I like to see that you have heard what I'm asking and that your answer is clear and well thought through. And that kind of goes back to like, don't lie or fake it. Like it's pretty obvious when you don't know what you're talking about. Just be clear and honest. But in terms of like interpersonal skills, one of the things I do talk about or ask at all levels of the hiring process when I'm looking for candidates is pair programming. So have you pair programmed? Have you contributed to a repo with other people? Like, do you know about branching? Do you know about merge conflicts? Like, how have you proven that you've worked on a development team and not just that you are a sole developer? So that is a little bit of interpersonal, but a little bit of technical skills as well. I would say when you're talking about that, you can talk about your communication style within those interactions. Like if you've pair programmed with something and you've had a conflict about what your the approach that you would take on solving a problem, how did you solve that problem or resolve that conflict? And also, again, I feel like I've gone back to this again, but like enthusiasm really is big for me, especially not coming out of, still deep in a pandemic. Morale is a tough thing for a manager to try and change. And especially working with a team that's been, remote, working through a global pandemic, a lot of stuff going on in the world. I really am looking for people that are going to be maybe helping me lift the morale of the team and not another person who I have to really like right the ship in order to get them around. So that doesn't mean that you can't have emotions or can't be, like honest about how you're dealing within the world. But again, like if you're coming in and you're acting like you don't want the job or that you're just like, you can't even deal with doing another interview, like that's a big red flag for me, and it's probably not going to move you forward in the process. So Selena asks, any thoughts on junior devs applying for positions where maybe you don't have every skill listed or the specific number of years of experience? Lots of junior entry level roles asking for 2 to 3 years experience. Yeah. Yeah, that is something that is bullshit, I think. Pardon my French. I see it all the time. Junior levels are not entry levels. Entry levels is not 3 years. Like, that's ridiculous. What are you talking about, people? So I would say that if it's labeled junior or if it's entry level or something like that, and it's like 5 years, either don't apply for that because someone put that up, or apply for it but don't look at the entry level years or something like that. Like, you just kind of have to pick. And I think that goes for job to job. Like, it's very situational. You can sort of tell if it's a senior level position that they're looking for and someone in HR just labeled it junior or put it into LinkedIn as entry level or something like that. That's pretty obvious. But if it's like, oh, we're looking for our newest junior developer who's going to help out and like be, you're going to have all these mentors and we need you to have 4 years experience. Don't worry about that. Just apply. The worst you're going to hear back is nothing. Or a polite no. So yeah, and in terms of every skill listed, I was actually just having this conversation with a person who's just starting to get into teaching themselves JavaScript right now, and they were asking about it. And most of the requirements in a job description, specifically if you're going to a big company, they're not written by the people that are actually looking to fill that role. And sometimes those job descriptions get rolled over and over and new things are just added. So at best, it's a wish list. And at worst, there's things on that list that are completely out of date and unnecessary for the role. Unfortunately, if you are like, there's only so many hours in a day, there's only so many jobs you can apply for. So that can be annoying because you might be wasting time applying for a job that you're not gonna get an interview for because you don't have all those things listed. But I wouldn't say that those are, you shouldn't view them as requirements unless it's like, it's in the title. Like if it's like React developer, you should know React. But if it's, front-end developer and then React is listed with a bunch of other front-end frameworks, but you have a good solid understanding of JavaScript and maybe, Angular or something, yeah, just go for it. Highlight, like I said, highlight the stuff that you do know, be honest about what you don't know, and then sort of put it on them to be like, I'm really good. I think I could pick up React quickly. And how would you support me in doing so? Right. So let's see. Where else? Bookkeeper, I'm coming every time to college. Yeah. Technical part of our interviews. So that's a good question. So I've been in the process, like a year-long process of revamping our interview process. It used to be like 6 to 8 weeks, just because we're a smaller team. So coordinating schedules and getting people through for like an hour and a half of time of the devs' time and the COO's time and stuff was just so difficult. And part of that was we had a variety of different types of technical assessments that people were trying to do. So we've broken it down to, well, I'll tell you about the 2 most recent types. And just a little peek behind the curtain, this is often very much how development teams work. Like what you are experiencing as the interview process for an engineering team is like what their interview process is like right then. It's probably has been different in the past and it'll probably be different in the future. It's often always evolving, and so keep that in mind. But what we used to do was we would send a link to a repo the night before and ask the person to clone that repo down and get the app running on their machine, install any dependencies, and just make sure that it was up and running. And then there would be a 90-minute technical assessment. We call it the role interview. And 60 minutes of that is going through certain bulleted requirements within that repo, like make a request, get the data back, populate something, maybe paginate or something like that. And then another 30 minutes of like a Q&A type of session. That works unless you have a ton of applicants, because 90 minutes is a long time for anyone on the development team to be dedicated to just hiring. So that sort of limits the amount of things that we can do every day or every week. And so we tried, we've done, the most recent version is we use a program called Coder, I want to say, CoderPad, and it is it's an online tool, the online dev environment, and we populated it with certain questions that are somewhat algorithmic and somewhat real world, and then we just sort of like take 45 minutes, shorten that to an hour, take 45 minutes or so to go through the questions and just sort of get you through as many as you can. And we have a variety of different questions in order to, that are sort of focused on different aspects of what we're looking for in a developer. So all of that being said, we always try to have it be more of a pair programming session and a more of a conversation and a problem solving session to see how you think as a developer and see how you would approach something versus just solve this algorithm problem. It's a binary yes or no. And if you get no, you don't get to work here. So. Ooh, that's a good question from Rebecca. If I'm new to tech and older, how much of my prior non-tech work history do you want to see on my resume? That's a good question. I would say, I don't really care about resume length. If it's applicable, if you think it's applicable and you're proud of the work that you've done, show it. Someone that I went to coding bootcamp with, she ended up with like a 3-page resume coming out of bootcamp, and she was hired before she graduated from bootcamp. She was an attorney, so she had a lot of different experience, and it was all applicable. She had a really good. She presented it in a way that obviously, one, she was brilliant. Two, she presented her work experience in a way that really highlighted how that work prepared her for the job that she was applying for. I don't care, I guess. I don't have a number, but I would say any relevant stuff. I don't care what you were doing when you were like 16 or 17, making money to fill up your car to drive to school or whatever. But any of the stuff that's an actual career, I would love to know about.
So many good questions, y'all. Keep them coming.
Question sort of tagging along that, because I know you sort of touched on, how you have previous, like restaurant experience, stuff like that. So like that's actually where I'm coming from most recently. I have more like professional history before that. Is that sort of those sorts of roles? Are they ones that you want to see any sort of like as I have it now? It's just like, well, yeah, I was a server for the last 3 years. Like, is it worth it to like actually quantify any of that experience, or like, does it add anything rather than just saying this is what I was doing, just so you know I was working, basically?
Yeah, I mean, that would definitely be dependent on how you felt about the work that you were doing there, and if I wouldn't. It's all a little situational, right? Like I think it's kind of going to be obvious when someone is really trying to extract some sort of relevancy out of work that is maybe not the most relevant. But like I said, there's team leadership involved in serving. There's customer facing. There's customer service. I do think that interacting with like POS systems and being able to keep multiple things in your brain at one time as you're like taking orders and running tables and stuff is really important. So that is certainly, I wouldn't like, write a novella on it, but if you have a couple of sentences that you can extract about, like, oh, I was the team lead on this at this restaurant, and I, handled multiple clients, or, like managed different other servers or managed bar or something like that. I think it's something to be said for that. Yeah. Oh, this is a good question from Ryan. How is the pandemic changing hiring and demand for talent, specific to web development? So the good thing for you all is that it's very much favoring applicants, I think. It's not so great for me as a hiring manager. And here's why. At least this has been my experience, and this has been sort of my takeaway from the past, like, let's say 6 to 8 months. Everywhere's going remote. So now every company is now in competition with every other company for applicants. It does mean that you as applicants are are now in competition with each other because it's not just a local market. But there's tons of jobs out there, and good applicants are getting snatched up like, a wig off a dance floor. I honestly would interview someone and then 2 days later, like, go to tell them that we want to offer them a job and they were gone. Like, I I once actually was reaching out to past contractors to see if they were available for a project. Someone responded to me on Friday saying, "Oh, I was just actually let go because of the pandemic. So I do have time for projects to come on." I emailed them back on Monday, and they emailed me back on Wednesday saying, "I just got a new full-time job." So like, it was a weekend. Like, they got a new job within like one business day. So that's how I've noticed it as a manager, is that I have to move really fast to make sure that I get the people that I want, and I have to be competitive with what I'm offering them. I can't lowball people. I can't do like stuff like that. So not that I ever would, but yeah, it's definitely balls are in your court, I think, as applicants, because you have, like, the world is open now to you for jobs. Second part to the question: industry largely going remote. Is there a good chance of those roles coming back into the office? Yeah, I think so. We have recently decided that we are indefinitely remote first. But I know that our CEO, he wants to go back into the office quite badly. So eventually, it kind of worked out timing-wise that early this spring, the lease on our office was up, our 5-year lease. And so it was either renew another 5-year lease when we don't know what the state of the pandemic is going to be. This was like in January, or let it lapse and just go full in on remote until we can figure stuff out. And so that's what we've done. Since then, we've hired non-Portland based remote employees, still continuing to look at a lot of remote candidates. So we're going to be remote first, and then probably when and if we do secure another space, we'll want to be back in a way that, like, people that want to be there can be there. So we've talked about, maybe scheduling, having a smaller, more pared down physical location. And then if people want to come in, once or twice a week, or people want to come in for specific meetings, then that's great. But otherwise, we're going to be remote first for sure. Oh, Ryan following up with the hat trick. Third part to the question: has the remote favored migration of dev roles led to candidates overseas competing in the US market? Yes, actually. So this is interesting. I feel that has favored larger companies. Right now, we as Planet Argon are exploring the ability to hire non-US based people, but I mean, this is my first foray into like visas and employment visas and things like that. But even contract based, it's really complicated because you need to like be setting up LLCs or getting permissions to work with and to hire within those locations. So there's a lot of sort of red tape that goes into being able to hire someone that is not a U.S. citizen if you're a U.S.-based company. And but yeah, it's certainly opened it up, I think, to larger companies that have that infrastructure already in place. And I think it's great. I mean, especially larger companies that have multiple offices, being able to tap candidates from wherever on the globe means that, they could have a development team that's kind of running 24/7, and nobody has to stay up all night long. So that's cool.
I do have a question, but it's specific to my own case, and we are running up against the end of time. So I can also just save it for, a personal chit chat. And if
Is it
anyone
about-
else,
Is it about
What?
surface?
what?
No.
No, it's just about moving around a lot and having a very kind of like spotty work history with gaps and short work experiences and like 3 different locations in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I have a similar resume. You know, I think.
Okay, this relates to some other people, it seems.
Yeah, I think like this is all just me personally as a hiring manager. Like, I don't see that as a negative thing. I have seen resumes where there was like 3 of the same jobs within a year. So if someone's getting a job and doesn't stay there for like 2 or 3 months at a time, and that's over and over and over, that I might ask about and be like, hey, did you quit those jobs? Were you fired? What's going on? Because generally, you know, I like to think that like if you don't like a job, you should probably be gone within the first 30 to 60 or 90 days. And if you do, you should probably give it at least a year to see if, you know, how things settle before looking elsewhere. So that's the spot. But in terms of like 2 to 3 year things, I think like I'm the oldest millennial. And so I think everyone from my generation down, that's just common, right? Like 2 to 3 years and then you're at a new place is fairly normal at this point. So as a hiring manager personally, I wouldn't see that as a negative thing. And there's lots of reasons why someone might move or someone might leave a company. And if the hiring manager has questions, they'll probably ask. So just maybe be prepared to talk about it, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. Anyways, your resume is not going to change. So, so Peter asked, in your experience, how often are applicants doing their homework and effectively researching the role and company versus not really knowing much about it? How impactful is that for your consideration? It's pretty impactful, I would say. I'm not so much impressed about people that research well, that's not true. I would say that researching the role and trying to figure out what how the role might fit within the company is important. We have a section on our website that's like the history of Planet Argon, and it's this animated timeline and stuff. And I have people that have like gone through and like memorized or taken notes from that and brought it up. And I'm like, dude, I have been here for a year. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I wasn't there 17 years ago. I'm sorry. But not to say that was a fault of theirs, but just like, you don't have to take it to that extreme. But understanding what we do as a company, understanding some of the clients that we work with or the types of clients, and then coming prepared to ask questions about the role based on that understanding is really key. Because like I said, if a candidate can keep me longer past the scheduled time that I'm supposed to be interviewing because I'm telling them and I'm answering their questions, I'm talking about myself, I'm talking about the company, I'm talking about the role, I'm probably more likely to move them forward because they have gotten me to invest my time in them. And they've shown me that they are at least capable of, learning enough to like get me gabbing. So.
All right, y'all, last call for questions. Get them in. Yeah, if anything else comes up, I'll let you know. I'll also give y'all my email. I'm going to give you my personal email. I am transitioning out of the Tech Academy, so let's network and all of that. So there's my email if y'all have any questions, and if you want to get in contact with the Tech Academy too, I can put you in touch. I can. Ben gave his contact info out too, but sometimes I can be a go-between if you miss that. So reach out. Thanks so much for being here, everyone. Thanks so much, Ben. I'm so sorry for mispronouncing your last name. It'll never happen again. I do want to let y'all know next week we have a recruiter from Insight Global, Taryn Cox, coming in to talk about getting into tech. Those are always really great conversations, lots of insight in that interview process and application process. We have our in-person event coming up on August 19th. that I was harping on about at the beginning. So that's a big career development event. Ben will be there as well. We'll be looking over resumes, taking professional photos, having mini tech talks, a coding challenge, just pretty much anything that's involved in the interview process. You can come try it out and get another set of eyes on all your things. And oh, that sounded weird, sorry. Another set of eyes on all of your credentials and papers, and network with the broader Portland tech community and bootcamp community. So reach out about that. Thanks so much, everyone. This is my last official tech talk with the Tech Academy, and they've been so fun. I've really enjoyed them. So if you've been coming to them consistently, thank you, and I'll miss you. I'll be attending as an attendee, I'm sure. But thanks so much, Ben. That was an awesome, awesome talk. I knew we'd get to the 2 o'clock mark.
We did it, even a little bit overnight. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much, y'all. Reach out if you need anything. Thanks, Ricardo.